All right, we're back again. Just want to go over arc fault, ground fault, and tamper-resistant outlets for a home. This is something that gets questioned a lot, throws a lot of people for a loop. We've all heard of ground faults or GFIs or GFCIs. Now we're getting this arc fault thing thrown at us, or AFCI, and then tamper-resistant. What's that all about? Well, first and foremost, as I've done every time, disclaimer, 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 disclaimer. Um, Trying to help out here, but this isn't exhaustive. This isn't going to cover everything, just kind of can't, but nonetheless want to help out. So I answer these kind of questions day in and day out in my job as an electrical plans examiner, and thought this might help out. So here we go. We're going to talk about these three things. First, let me talk to you about ground faults, because you're probably most familiar with those. So what I've done here is I've kind of come up with this little list from code is where do we need a ground fault circuit interrupter? Where is that going to be required? So here's kind of a list. Um, take a look at this list. If you're not real sure about this, you're always welcome to ask an electrician or ask a code official or, ask just kind of anybody that deals with this on a regular basis. Just as a reminder what this is, these are those receptacles that we see all the time, and they've got the little push to test button on them, and they've got the little red button, and you see those in your bathrooms and all the time. Sometimes this is in the form of a circuit breaker, can be a little hard to find. Also, sometimes the device that's connected to it and protected, you might have one of these outlets, then you might have two or three others that seem to be plain, but if there was a fault at any one of these, this would trip, and you might think it was the circuit breaker. Pretty common mistake. I saw one in a pool house once that drove the homeowner to distraction, as the GFI was actually inside the garage on a wall, and the pool house was 20 feet from the house and was protected by the GFI inside. That wouldn't quite follow muster, meet muster anymore, but that's what happened to this poor individual. So getting back to the plan. So that's GFI. These are the areas where they're going to be required. Um, then let's also talk about arc fault circuit interrupters. That's one that gets to everybody, especially as they're having to pay for them right now. They're kind of expensive still. I wouldn't say that they're overly expensive for what they provide, but they're just a little early in their technology. They've been in the last few code cycles, and the 2014 code cycles is going to create even more need. In the 2014, I don't know of a place where it isn't required. You can kind of see the list here. My favorite is the bottom one, or similar. So that kind of comes down to your inspector, or similar. You just about got everything. I think the only ones that you can say definitely are not required right now are kitchen countertops and bathrooms. But that's going to depend on your code official. But an arc fault circuit interrupter has a different purpose. It's designed more to protect the system. The classic driving the nail in the wall to hang a picture going into a conductor that's hidden in the wall, or a screw, or someone with the sawzall wanting to cut an opening and getting into the wiring with their saw blade. An arc fault will sense that kind of fault, and it will trip. Now, typically arc faults, you can get the same kind of situation where it's in the receptacle and looks a whole lot like a GFI, but it's typically handled more at the circuit breaker level. And this is an example of some circuit breakers that have arc fault push to test button on them, and then resettable situation on them, and they're wired in a special way so that if there is an arcing fault, then that will trip this breaker and provide that protection. And pretty much required everywhere you have 120 volts, 15 or 20 amp devices in a home. Now there's another thing to be aware of, is the receptacles in our homes now. By and large, the 120 volt, 15 to 20 amp receptacles all have to be tamper resistant. And if you want to know what that looks like, well, here's an example. This outlet You can't quite read it because I don't have the resolution on it, but it has a TR for tamper resistant in the middle of it. And then it has you can see through the plastic shutters. We all have child-proofed or child-friendly our homes with little removable devices that we plug in. These take it a step further. They're built in. Some of these can be a bit maddening to get something plugged in, and then sometimes even to remove the plug, the outlet. I mean, gone are the days when you can give a vacuum cord a flip and out they come. That's probably good for us and saves us all from buying a lot of cords. But these also give the curious little kids at least some resistance to putting the key in the slot or the paper clip in the slot. It's not that they can't do it. That's why they call it tamper resistant. But that's the idea, trying to protect protect the kids as much as anything. These are required all throughout your house, and basically anything below 5.5 feet. Your ceiling receptacles, your high wall receptacles don't require it at this time, but that's where it sits. So hopefully this has been helpful. It gives you a little bit of information about the outlets that you're going to need for your home.